In this video, we're going to look at two Python programs that have functions that are a little more complicated. In the first one, the functions are going to have arguments which are lists, and the second one is going to have a return type that is a dictionary. The URLs for the two programs we're going to look at can be seen here. The first one takes two versions of a mean function, a function that calculates the average of a list of numbers, and the second one is going to do even more statistics on that list of numbers and is going to return a dictionary, a set of key value pairs, or each key value is a different statistical measure. Here we want to make the distinction between a list and the items in that list. So in line 7, we are declaring and initializing a list of scores. And then in 8, we are printing out those scores, and we see in the printout that it includes these square brackets that are indicating that it is a list and that certain things come along with a list, and it's more than just the items in the list. In number 9, we are printing out, we're using the type function, and we're printing out the type of the scores variable, and it's telling us that it is of the class list. And then we are putting an asterisk before scores and printing that out, and it's just showing us the numbers this time without the square brackets. So now it is telling us just what are the elements of the list, but we no longer have the list structure. Next, we are defining a function mean that takes an argument values, and we will see in the definition that the values are looped over. So values must be what we call iterable. It must be able to put it in a for loop to go through the elements that belong to it. And so we start off with a sum of 0. We start a for loop because values is iterable. X stands for a given element in the loop. And then we are summing up those elements, and then when we are done with the for loop, we are returning the sum divided by the length or the number of the arguments. That gives us the average. And so then we are using this function. First we print the scores and see that it was a list. Then we can print the mean of the scores, and that function works. But if we try to put into the mean function just individual numbers that we want to take the average of, mean 1, 2, 3, 4, then we find out that that does not work, that it expects a single thing called values, which is iterable, and then it contains smaller things. So it doesn't want you to send it the things, it wants you to send you this structure, this iterable structure that contains things, but it doesn't want you to send the things, it wants you to send it the structure. So in Python, iterable means that the structure can be iterated over so that it can be in a for loop. So we had in our definition of our function a for loop, so that implied that the argument that we were looping over had to be iterable. In addition to being able to use something that's iterable in a for loop, there are some other sort of built-in things that apply. So it can be sort of cast as a list, it can be summed, sorted, and so on. Now we're looking at the definition of mean to another function that returns the average of a set of numbers. Let us pay attention to the argument of this function, star args. Remember what star did before to our list at the beginning of this program. It took our list structure and then gave us just the elements that were in the list and took away the sort of list structure. So what this mean to function is expecting is sort of individual numbers and not this list structure coming into it. But it's going to turn it into a list structure. So args is some kind of iterable structure, whereas star args is not. It's just 1, 2, 3. It's just some set of numbers. And so, but once we get on the inside, args is iterable, and so we have in 31 and 32 this for loop, and so we're adding up all the numbers and returning that sum divided by the number of arguments and therefore the average. So we see the difference in 35 when we call this function. We have mean2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That works here. Remember, in the previous function that did not work. Now in 36, if we say mean2 of scores, that no longer works. It's expecting, we can see in the definition 28 with the star in front of it, where it's expecting sort of individual value set, and we're trying to send it a whole structure of scores. It doesn't want that. But if we have scores with some structure, we can call it with 37 with star scores. So the star will sort of take the elements out of their structure, send them to the function in the way that the function wants them. Then the function will put them back into the structure it wants, makes the thing sent iterable, puts them in a for loop, calculates their sum, and so on. So this seems like a lot of crazy back and forth. It's unnecessary, but it makes this function more extensible. And it can handle 1, 2, 3, 4, but it can also, if you know how to call it, you can also use it with a list or something else like that. In our second program, we want to consider a stats function, a function that will send us a number of statistics. So before we were calculating a single number, the mean. Now we want to calculate a bunch of statistics, but in a single function. So we are going to initialize our scores just to have something to work with. Then we're going to define our stats function. We're going to work with the star args approach. And then we are going to start with an empty dictionary in line 5. My stats equals open curly, close curly. So that is giving us a place to add the key value pairs of our dictionary, but at this stage, we don't have any. Then our first key value pair is going to be the mean. So we're going to start with sum of 0. We're going to iterate over the args. We're going to add them all up, divide by the length, and then we are establishing the key value pair. So the key is the word mean, and the value is whatever number we just calculated by summing over the args and dividing by their length. In this example, our second key value pair for the stats function is going to be related to the standard deviation. So we're going to, again, start a sum variable at 0. We're going to loop over the iterable args. This time we're going to make a sum of the values x minus the average that was previously calculated. So that is a deviation. We are going to raise that to the second power. So we're squaring these things. That makes all of the deviations positive. And then when we're done with that for loop, we are going to divide that sum by the number of arguments minus 1. So a standard deviation, you divide by n minus 1 and not n. And then to sort of undo the squaring that we saw in 17, the standard deviation will take the square root of the previous result. And so we're raising av star star, raising it to the power of 1/2. And then that's the calculation, and now we're ready to establish the key value pair in line 20. So we say that my stats, square bracket, quote stdev, that will be our key. Stdev we're establishing as our key, and then the number we just calculated as the value. We're going to have a third key value pair, and then we're going to return the dictionary. So we took our iterable args and we are casting it as a list. So in that we are calling order. It's not yet ordered, but it's going to be ordered. And that's what we're doing in 23. So we are taking the sort method of order and putting them in order. And then finally, we are taking the 0th, the first element of order, which has been sorted, and so this will be the smallest, the minimum value. So we're setting up our key value pair in 25. The key is min, and the value is order with an index of 0, which should be the lowest value. And then in 27, we're going to say we're done with our statistical function. We have our 3 key value pairs, and we are returning our dictionary. In line 29, we are calling our stats function and sending it our list of scores. Remember the way we defined it, it was expecting a bunch of individual scores, and so we call it with star scores to sort of match that. And then stats is creating this dictionary with 3 parts, 3 key value pairs, and that is being assigned to what we called result. In 30, we are printing results, so we see in the printout the curly bracket and then the 3 key value pairs. And then in 31, we are showing how to access one of the individual parts key value pairs. So in that printout statement, we are saying the average score is, and then we're using this sort of formatting thing. So we're saying curly colon dot 3F. So that's saying that we want 3 decimal places. And then after the end of the statement, the closing quotation mark, then we say dot format. And then we're going to say that we want result, which is a dictionary, and then we say square bracket mean. So we want a particular value associated with the key mean. So we're only picking out one of the parts of the dictionary in this case.